Hey guys, how are you? It's Liam Norval here, and this is the Posh Cockney Podcast Hospitality News brought to you by the Industry Titans Season 2. I hope you've missed me because I've got some incredible Titans that I'm going to be bringing to you on this season. Today, we speak to Michael Kill, who's part of the NTIA, and he's been one of the most influential people during this lockdown period. And we're going to discuss Super Saturday and what's next for the hospitality industry. Michael Kill, thanks for coming on the podcast. How are you?
Very well, Liam. Thank you. Very well. Very well.
How has life in lockdown treated you?
I've got kids, so it's been a bit of a challenge. The school holiday bit has definitely pushed it because we work from home a lot of the time, and it's been quite. I mean, we've got a 3-year-old, an 11-year-old, and the 3-year-old. Obviously, it's playtime. So that's where it's been the biggest challenge. So it's a bit of handoff. I think the first Sky News interview I did was peppered with my 3-year-old screaming to speak to Daddy. So that's a reality check for lockdown for you, I'm sure.
Well, I've seen so many of those videos of kids jumping in on the crashing people's videos and when they're live, but they seem to get the most coverage actually, don't they?
Well, yeah. I mean, lucky my wife and my son are a little bit older, and my son's a little bit older, not my wife, or I'll get myself in real trouble. It is, they're on it, so they know what's going on, and they manage it pretty well. But my 3-year-old is like a ball of energy, bless him, and he just wants to be heard and wants to talk and do all the things that children want to do at that age, and doesn't understand that Daddy's got to talk to people about industry. I'm sure he will later down the line.
Well, I'm in the same boat. I've got a 3-year-old daughter, and she's often trying to get in on the interviews.
Yeah, I know.
Let's jump straight into it, Michael. So can you tell us about your hospitality journey and how it all began?
I'll be honest with you. I was working in. I came away from a university degree, doing a physiotherapy degree, and I did it for a year. Didn't really work out for me. Came back to the South Coast where I was living at the time with my parents, and this all started by getting a bar job in a venue called Fifth Avenue, which was in Southsea at the time, which was your sort of atypical sort of ritzy, I suppose, a long time ago. And worked behind the bar, did the floor, then started working on the door, and then I got interested in promoting, and I started helping some of the house guys there. I think Rocky and Diesel were one of the first sort of events we put on. Then I did some sort of Thursday nights with a guy called Rob Searle, who was, did a lot of work in terms of house music, etc. at the time. And then I came away. I was a promotions manager in Bournemouth for a while, under the old sort of, I suppose it was Rank Leisure, I think, at the time. And then it sort of was bought by Northern, then Luminar Leisure. And I worked my way up from, up to a general manager. And then I went into marketing at head office. And then I went from there. I was doing drum and bass events. I was doing hospitality. Did a few Ram Records things. Worked with Circus Records as they sort of came through. We're doing a lot of work with Obi from Echolocation, with people like Chase Estates, Nero, etc. as they were coming up. And then I went off and did some work in my own venue that I had in Eastbourne, just outside of Brighton. And then from there, I had a sort of a load of sort of different roles. I was running the venue in just outside of Brighton, and I was also had a venue in Oxford in Cowley, a big live venue, where we sort of took it from nothing up to sort of 2 or 3 nights a week, but really challenged the O2 Academy down the road. Then I went off and became a ops director for a group. And then I went off to University of East Anglia, where I was a commercial director for the Student Union, which 5,000 capacity space over there, and worked a lot. And then I came back to here. So, but yeah, been all over the country, did a lot of openings, was a promoter, done festivals, worked with a lot of people. I did a lot in the sort of UK garage scene for years. I used to If you remember Time and Envy in Romford.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Well, the Thursday night was sort of my garage night. So the likes of EZ and Norris Windross and people like that were all my sort of residents on rotation with Chris Creed. And, we did really well up until the point that garage got a bit raucous, and, it sort of changed, and grime and cruise and things like that came in. And so, yeah, I mean, I've had quite a checkered
Yeah.
interest, both corporate, commercial, but also very music led. I've always had a huge passion for music. And I know when I was working in the corporate world, part of the reasons why I left was the fact that they just had no vision. I mean, I was talking to them when Pendulum was sort of really breaking through, and I was saying to them, listen, you've got these drum and bass acts are going to become live music sensor, they're going to move forward. And we were getting Pendulum, the full band for like 500 quid doing DJ sets, and they couldn't see it. And, years later when I came away, they were phoning me, talking to me about Chasing Status and Nero and all these sort of things. And not being given the opportunity because they just no vision in terms of investing in music, which was a challenge. So I got frustrated and came away with it, and went and did my own thing and made my success out of doing events. And a lot of the time it was going head to head with the venues that I used to work for. So it was quite funny clearing them out on a Saturday night, thinking that their Sharon and Tracy sort of moment was gonna win over. So it's been exciting. It's been a roller coaster, but I absolutely love it. Biggest thing in the world is standing outside a venue that you've brought a load of people to, and they're queuing down the road, and they're and the next day you're getting texts like, when's the next one, what's going on? I mean, if you want to get a buzz out of something, then that's definitely what I would thrive on.
It sounds like you miss those days a little bit.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it's like you say. I mean, I'm 47 years old now. I've got children. Going in, and my obsessive nature, I think, is the way I put it. Going and standing in the middle of the high street. I think I'm one of those old school promoters that I didn't trust anybody unless I did it myself, or and you can't do everything. And the fact of the matter is I was very much, if I've got 5,000 flyers to give out in the old days, and I know flyers aren't as big a thing now, but I don't want to give a flyer to someone who doesn't want the flyer. I'd rather give 5,000 flyers to individuals who want to read it or want to use them. So I was quite particular with the way I did things, but it worked and it created a success. So I can't argue with it. I miss it. I do miss it. I mean, it's the buzz and feeling of getting people together and putting DJs on and making a night work. It's phenomenal. But in the same respect, you're not really a promoter until you've lost your own money. And
for sure.
A few times as well. So I want to repeat.
So Michael, does that bring us to where you are now at NTIA?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the NTIA was an opportunity to step away from operations, but still have a massive influence on the industry. It was started by a guy called Alan Miller about 6 years ago. The premise was based around some challenges, particularly in East London, where police, a particular chief superintendent, had highlighted the only way that they can reduce crime is by reducing the amount of venues or closing venues. As almost as good as Boris Johnson's, we're not going to close you, but please don't go to pubs, bars and restaurants, in the hope that people are going to ignore him, probably. I've sort of moved forward, developed. I worked in the background for quite a period of time. Alan has always been a ball of energy. He's now stepped away and doing a lot of work outside of this, and he's got his own projects in terms of film, etc. And he's based in New York. So, plus he's got a young son that he wants to go and do things with. So from that perspective, it kind of allowed a nice transition. We've gone through, we've changed the board quite dramatically. We've got some really, really proactive, music-focused, industry-orientated people like Obius Seeker from Echolocation, Professor Fiona Measham from Liverpool University, who people like Mike Grieve from Subclub in Glasgow, Lisa Lashes or Lisa Rose Wire, the DJ, she's on the board. Norris Windross on the board. So we've got a really, a vibrant group of board members who are keen to drive this industry forward in the right way with the vehicle that's the NTIA. So, given that opportunity to be able to mould and shape the NTIA in a way that I felt had the biggest impact was a massive piece for me. So it's been very exciting. The last sort of 2.5 years have definitely been testing, but I think the last 3 months have really it's been an education for me. And it's been very beneficial in terms of the NTIA because I think it's been allowed to show its value. And I think we've represented ourselves very well. Still a lot of work to do, but we've represented ourselves very well.
I mean, from me looking in, you've been one of the most influential people during this time for people in the industry, especially in the nighttime sector. How do you summarize what's happened to our industry in the last 3 months? I mean, we might be here all day, but try and summarize what's happened and your opinion.
It's interesting. I did an Institute of Licensing keynote to just under 150 licensing officers. And they asked me the same question, can you give us an overview of the industry? And I said, it's almost like the 5 stages of grief. Denial, bargaining, acceptance, etc. If you think about it, we watched a lot of things happen internationally, almost with a denial that we wouldn't see the level that we've seen today. Unprepared, unaware, possibly in the background thinking that we would never, see our government make the steps that they've made. So in terms of our industry, it was almost a bit of a shock. We had a bit of we were sat sort of comforted by the fact that we were not a third world country and potentially we had the systems in place to deal with. And I think what's come about is we've realized how vulnerable we are. Moving on from there, we've also realized how difficult it is and how financially vulnerable we are in terms of our product base. But I can also take a lot from this in terms of 2 things more than, that I think have been massive. Communication between the industry in terms of all parts, whether you're a sector festival, whether you're a nightclub, bar, has been, has increased exponentially across all those different types, which is really, really positive. And I wouldn't want to lose that. Now we've gained that sort of position, and it's definitely discussions that are happening in the background. And the other thing is in terms of the government departments, from BAYS to DCMS to Home Office, they've learned more about our industry in the last 3 months than they could ever have done in the time that they would sit dormant, not listening. And they've had to take account of some of the vulnerabilities, had to listen to sector trade bodies, and we've been a reliance, So I think with those 2 things as a positive in a very negative sort of, environment, has been a huge challenge. The other element to this is it's the frustrating bit. If you remember back when the first budget was released and everyone was like, we're just not going to survive this if you're going to end up locking us down. We lobbied very hard to get things like, support for staff, grants, etc. The challenge that we had with it was very drip fed. It was almost like we'd stamp our feet and a little bit more would come out, stamp a bit harder and something else would come out. And I don't think that should have happened. I think what we should have done is at least try to create some sort of roadmap. And still today, where, while pubs and restaurants are open, the reality of the opening weekend is you've got thousands of people who have been socially starved, and we've seen that through illegal raves popping up here, there, and everywhere, that are looking to come out and be an active part in what's going on in terms of pubs and restaurants. But bear in mind that probably only 50% of those venues are opening. Yeah, most of them are deciding not to go past midnight just to secure, just to be able to open and test the systems, and they're all running at about 50% of capacity. So it's almost like the worrying part here is this launch is, we've got to be careful that we don't overcommit, I suppose, is the way. And a Saturday night was always a dangerous commitment anyway. So I think that the challenges are still there. We've got massive things with regard to landlords, which are still up in the air. I mean, the government trying to say to the industry, look, there's a code of conduct, please pay nicely. It's just not working.
Mm-hmm.
Throwing the can down the road in terms of, staving off the debt action from landlords only means that people are 2 quarters down the line rather than just one. So, everyone's considering how long is this going to happen, go on for? What is the roadmap? When are we going to reopen? And if we can't reopen, allow us the opportunity to plan to either, exit what we're doing or, plan financially and allow our staff to understand. There's no point in releasing things as they've done 10 days before you're due to open on the 4th of July. There's a lot of people just can't move that quickly. And their buildings are not set up for it. And they potentially need to do some work on them. So, yeah, a bit of poor show, really, in terms of the government. And it's not like it hasn't been communicated. I mean, you can't make it any clearer. So,
yeah, no, you 100%. I agree with everything you said there. I mean, tomorrow's is meant to be Super Saturday. It's been billed as that in the papers. Yeah. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow? Do you think there's going to be thousands of people in London, hitting bars and beer gardens, or do you think, which is what I think, is it might actually be a bit more of a mellow affair? I don't think people are going to be rushing out the door just yet because they want to see what it's, for one, it's difficult to even get a space because you have to pre-book, and then you've got all the other areas where leaving your name and address, and this is alien for lots of people. And I think I think they want to sort of see what happens before they start rushing out and joining up with friends. What's your thoughts?
I think this weekend is going to be a learning curve for everyone, including the police and the local authorities are in the same boat as the public, same boat as the operator. The public are not sure what what the experience is going to be like. The operator are trying to do their best to mitigate any risk, but it's all a bit of a sort of finger in the wind. Let's see how we go. There's still a massive amount of questions between the government guidance, legislation, and the expectation from local authorities and police, because there's all I mean, we've had an immense amount of cases where you've got licensing officers saying no, these are the law when their guidance is. I mean, we've had to work with a team of barristers who have been trying to dispel some of these issues and clearly highlight that guidance is guidance and legislation is legislation. While we've got police officers and licensing officers saying things like you can only have 30 people in a building, which contradicts guidance and legislation. You can't play music, which is not right either. So you've got a lot of people very confused with a framework that is very loose and very grey area. But we've had a load of people say, "Oh no, it's grey. It's because it's very flexible." But flexibility is great for operators because we can work around it. But when it comes to licensing and policing, they want structure, they want black and white. Yeah. And that's where it falls down, because all you're doing is allowing them to make up the gaps, which is what we're finding at the moment. It's been a massive challenge. And we've recently done a big survey on it. I mean, most people out there, and I think it was like 51% of venues were not going to open. And of that, 65% of them were the late bars and nightclubs that weren't going to open. I think only 30% of pubs are not going to open, pubs and restaurants are not going to open. And they're all around financial viability and the fact that they're not able to get ready for COVID. But a lot of people are sat there going, you know what, I'm going to hold fire and see how the first week goes.
Yeah.
See what I can take in terms of learning. Similar with the retail sector, as you can appreciate, the last thing we want is a load of people taking pictures of crowded spaces within clubs, but bars or pubs, because it puts out the wrong message. And it's almost like the Primark message when retail opened. So, we've I'm in two camps. I've seen the bookings for venues have sold out very, very quickly, particularly in main cities. And I've seen the requirement for spaces in some of the most popular venues go off the charts. I mean, one venue I know who have been very, very, on point in terms of their risk assessment and so forth. They're allowing 350 people in, but they've had 25,000 people try to get into that. So as you can appreciate, that suggests a very, very different perspective. I think the worry we have is if all of these pubs and restaurants close early, where are people going to go? Are we going to end up having some, house parties and things like that? Potentially people go out into the streets. We're asking people to be sensible, but it's not easy, given the circumstances of, like you say, 50% of that capacity being reduced in terms of opening cultural spaces or pubs, restaurants, etc. And then we're talking about a very limited capacity for people to take an active part. And I know there have been sittings, like 2-hour spaces for people but I mean, if you're a 100 capacity pub in the middle of Westminster and your social distancing only allows 30 people in, I mean, those people who want to come in, they're just, they're going to get frustrated. So I think it's going to be a test for everybody. The staff are going to be under an immense amount of pressure, and that's why we're calling for people to make sure that, they're considerate in terms of this weekend in particular. And I know there has been some irresponsible sort of tweeting. I know the Treasury put a tweet out saying go out, grab a beer, and then retracted it. I've seen Sheffield Council do something else, talking about the only winner out here is coronavirus, and if you start huddling, and there's been some real sort of odd messaging from some of the councils locally. Even the Treasury have sort of, they've got some things wrong. We need to slowly attach ourselves to this, grow safely, make sure the staff and customers are safe, and let's test the water. But I just want to, most of the thing is that let's just urge the police and the licensing officers and the EHO to be realistic. Don't go out there with an enforcement head looking to close venues, because that's one of the biggest concerns. And I know the barristers that have been working with us, the likes of Sarah Clover, Philip Colvin, and these people are all concerned that Section 19, which are closure notices, are going to sprout up, where police officers are going to take the EHO or the guideline element as gospel. And that's where the challenges are. I mean, there's a lot to take in. We're not going to get it right. The police and licensing officers are not going to get it right. But this weekend is about, us bedding in and allowing each other to just feel our way. And then, people that are being silly operationally, I can understand, but we can't control all customer behaviour. We can only do what we can do. And, it's almost like they've set it up as a New Year's Eve, but with half the capacity. I mean, it's crazy, isn't it? It's like, well, I'm going to invite 10,000 people, but there are only 500 spaces.
Yeah.
Don't worry. I hope it goes all right for you, but everyone be sensible. And you're like, come on, guys, let's just be realistic here. This is the reason why these illegal raves are popping up, is because they're socially starved. People want to get out, especially the youngsters. I mean, the people that believe that they're not vulnerable in terms of age groups, they're sat there saying, I don't know why I'm still being housed. They're looking at the stats, and there are so many different stats out there. It's ridiculous. And everyone's just, particularly the millennials, they're all sat there going, right, listen, enough of this. I want to get out. I want to socialise. I want to meet my friends. I've had enough of my mum and my sister and all the other bits that go along with it. So, they just want to be able to express themselves. And if we're not careful, the worrying bit is there is going to be this mainstay of illegal raves. There always has been, don't get me wrong. But I think it can be, there's going to be an extension of those coming out that potentially could affect the nighttime economy in one. But I also think the nighttime economy has an out that is an outlet for those people as well. So,
will you be going out tomorrow?
I'm going to be watching very carefully. I've got a few phone calls that I know I'm probably going to get, and my number has been passed around to a load of people just in case they do have issues. And we've got some legal sort of support in the background just in case we do have any issues out there. We did a big mail shot this morning, which was all about making sure that everyone understood what the requirements were, where the guidelines were, where they can be and where they can't be in terms of legal position. So it's just preparing everyone, but everyone's doing their own individual RA. Every site's different. So, there are going to be mistakes. There's no two ways about it. But, people aren't prepared. Nervous, but prepared. Interestingly enough, some of the people that are most confident in terms of venues are really nervous.
Yeah.
And that really sort of gives you an idea of the position and the tentativeness of this week. As much about licensing and police and things coming down on them and what the expectation is, because the guidance has been so grey that it's almost like, you get the feeling that I think a lot of the police officers and licensing, and definitely the Met, have had quite a pragmatic approach. They've not been really enforcement led. So what they've turned around and said is, look, focus on licensing. As long as people are taking active steps to mitigate the risk, we're all in this learning position. But, there are a lot of police and licensing up and down the country that are being very enforcement led. I mean, Bristol City Council were saying that, there was no music at all, could not be any music at all. And we had to intervene through a barrister to give them the guidance and let them understand, or otherwise they were going to, they were talking about 30 people maximum in a premises and, no music at all. And we had to get involved and give them the clarity centrally so that they could release the shackles somewhat.
Wow.
So it's that sort of work that goes on in the background that people don't see in terms of particularly the NTIA and some of the other trade bodies that are fighting to make sure people have actually got a chance to trade.
Yeah. So one of the biggest areas in hospitality is obviously nightclubs and that sort of late night live music venues. They've been hit probably one of the hardest for sure. Do you think that they can survive this pandemic?
I think they can, but they need further government support. I don't think anyone sat around the table is sat there thinking that something's not going to come. I believe Wednesday next week there's an announcement of further support from Rishi Sunak. We've I think we've got just over 1,600 email letters that have gone to local MPs, that have gone to the Chancellor, asking for an extension of provision. I think there's two things that need to come out of this. They need the provision to support them up until the point of re-engagement, and they need a clear roadmap, and they need to get rid of the uncertainty. If we can achieve both of those and give people confidence that they can survive and have some sort of financial buffer, as well as understand when they can open, then they can communicate appropriately with not only the customer, but also their staff, and then they can financially plan. If we can get all that in place, which is what we're aiming to get done, then yes, they can survive. But it's like you say, we need to understand the timeline. If we're talking after Christmas, then I think we're going to lose a lot of businesses. If we're talking August, then I think people will hold out and they'll do their best to get to that point. I think that the bitter pill to swallow is a lot of these people have had to compromise their financial position to keep their businesses going over a decision that was not made by them. It was outside of control. And as you can appreciate, I mean, if you've got to take on a £250,000 loan so that you can get past a position which the government have enforced upon you, it's kind of very difficult to, especially if you spent 10 years building a business. Sure. And you've got rid of all your debt, and then all of a sudden, because of this pandemic, you're in a position where you're in debt again. It must be the most frustrating thing in the world. Landlords have been a huge issue for us, and we've still got no resolve to it. I believe that the industry can survive. I think we're going to lose businesses without a doubt, but in some respects, some of those businesses I think potentially would have been lost anyway because of their financial makeup. And I don't want to say that lightly, because I think that people, there's two kinds of businesses in this industry. There's ones that are manage with your heart and your passion and the music and everything else, and you do everything to make it survive in terms of compromising yourself, which in some respects is not healthy. And then you've got businesses which are managed with your head, and people are very clear on what they want to achieve, and they've got a passion for what goes on, but they're very sort of sensible in terms of how they approach. So I think there are some hearts businesses that we could lose without a doubt. But I think the challenge for the government at the moment is, expediently to try and get as much information out as possible so that they can make concise decisions. The other thing is, I don't know if you saw this radical planning reform announcement on the 30th, where the government are suggesting that there is going to be an opportunity for vacant commercial spaces with a very limited planning submission to be converted into residential. So as you appreciate, a lot of businesses out there are mothballed. They're not paying their landlords rent. As soon as the potential opportunity comes up that the landlord may well want to come out of the hospitality sector because of its uncertainty and move into residential, Boris Johnson has just opened the door for them to do that a lot more efficiently without having to go through the hoops and that would normally sort of precede that position. So we've recently just put something else, concerned that that radical planning position could mean that there are businesses lost to landlords who want to redevelop into residential, which is where some of our concerns are. So there's lots of things going on in the background that I think that do concern us, and for the better will of that. Look, some landlords are fantastic; they've been really good, but you've got 50% of the landlords, clearly through surveys and things that we've done, are just not playing ball, and then not allowing people the opportunity and not sharing the burden, which means that everyone's just sat there and they're just getting bills saying, "I want my next, quarter's rent." So it's a big challenge for everybody at the moment, and it's frustrating. I've had so many, and you've got to remember the human element to this. The pressure that people are under, the government have actually, you talk about well-being and mental health. Imagine if you were a nightclub owner in this environment, pubs and restaurants are opening, but you can't open because you're a nightclub. And, you put your heart and soul in it, you've got your house on the business, and there's no provision that's out there at the moment that gives you clarity. There's no roadmap. You're almost lost. You've got your staff phoning you, you've got your landlords phoning you, you've got your creditors phoning you. Think of the immense amount of pressure that's in this situation that is, that the government needs to resolve. And if they don't, then, they're compromising people. And that's a bit that we're trying to get across, the human element, definitely with a lot of the press that we're doing at the moment. We're trying to allow people to understand how challenging this is. And even that IOL keynote that I did on the 5 stages of grief, I had 5 or 6 people email me saying I didn't realize how bad it was, which was a bit of an eye-opener. And they were from licensing officers and things like that, and they just turned around and said, "You know what, I'm not going to send out these standard emails. I'm actually going to pick the phone up and speak to the people." So I think if we can affect people in that way, I think it's good. But we definitely need to work collaboratively. We can't be all sat in a boat saying, "This is my job, this is what I do. If you do it wrong, I'm going to catch you out." It's got to be, put your hand across the divide. And operators the same, because sometimes operators just shut up shop and sit in their house and go, "I don't want to talk about it. If I ignore it and get on with it, maybe they won't visit me." So that's the other element to this that you've got to be slightly concerned about. So everyone's got to start communicating more effectively, and then we'll be able to get through this together.
You made some great points there. That some of the club owners that I know, a more realistic date for opening is probably September, end of September, which is what they're working to. And, it seems like a long way away, but, when you've waited this long, I suppose you don't want to be shut down straight away again by a second wave or something like that. So, let's wait and see on that. And I agree with your point on landlords. There are some really good ones, and there are some really bad ones. So let's hope that we can have some sort of clarification on that. Let's move on to a bit about you then, Michael. What makes you tick? Why do you do what you do? You speak very passionately. What inspires you?
I think the thing about it is I've pretty much done every job that there is in this sector, from sort of festival promoter to independent promoter to bar staff, etc. So I think the thing is it's given me so much. Probably as a character build, it's allowed me to sort of develop as a person and deal with some of the things in front of me. I don't think if I hadn't experienced the things that I've experienced in this industry, I wouldn't have been built to do what I do today.
Yeah.
And it's. I mean, I'm 47, but I still talk like I understand culture and music and these sort of things, and I'm having comparable conversations with my 21-year-old and my sort of 15-year-old who's talking about TikTok and all the different sort of technologies. So I think the link that I have here is I have a passion for music. I've got an obsessive nature anyway. I love the idea of entertainment and people coming out and enjoying spaces and environments which are curated and built by entrepreneurs. I love the fact that you're mixing with day-to-day some people who are so forward-thinking, both technology and experiential wise, that it keeps you quite young. So I think as I get older, I may well take a step back, but I'll still absorb as much as I can in terms of youth culture and music, and still try to identify and understand, how things are being built. I may at times still sound like my dad, but and I'm sure my sons will remind me of that, frequently. But the fact of the matter is it does keep me young. I absolutely love that, and it's like you say, when you've got an obsessive nature, or when you're someone who's very driven, it helps to have such a fast-moving environment. And if you think about our industry is so fickle around its subjects: music, fashion, and people. I mean, you can't get a more fast-moving subject headers to sort of engage in. So, yeah, I've just always been in it, always enjoyed it. My wife is submerged in it. My son is, constantly. All of the children that I have are absolutely sort of immersed in music and culture. So, whether they're playing instruments. I mean, my son plays the guitar and the piano amazingly. He's at Oxford University. He's doing really well in marketing communications. He also does some work for the NTIA. So he's doing fantastic. My other son's into sort of indie music live side. So he's constantly throwing stuff across to me, keeping me up to date with what's going on. And the youngsters are just dragging me through the woods and sort of unwanted walks with the dog normally, sometimes when you're just having a real late one trying to keep up with everything. So I just think it's just about just being around that energy and keeping yourself young, and and that passion and obsessive nature that I have inherent in my personality allows me to sort of engage in it and keep on top of it. So that's how I'd probably sum it up in a word. So
you're building a family empire in the hospitality industry, by the sounds of things.
Well, I did hospitality, music, culture. I mean, there's so many different angles to come in at from this. I mean, we're just doing some big work on equality and diversity. We're doing some big work on well-being and mental health with Jenny Cochran from Get Ahead, used to be part of AEI, and we're looking at sort of sector-specific mental health issues, things like men within mental health, particularly things like door security, where people are finding it very difficult to sort of share or take an active part. Equality and diversity with things like Black Lives Matter, LGBT community, women within our industry are some key sort of headers that we're working on at the moment. And so we're trying to embrace a more sort of considered human position as well as an industry position. So, but the big thing that we're sort of definitely focused on at the moment is music and the cultural element. I mean, we're just establishing #SaveNightlife as a charity, which is going to be focused on consumer-led sort of music, fashion, people. And then we're going to run that alongside the NTIA, which is an industry-based organisation for lobbying, politics, etc. So we're just setting ourselves up in a slightly different way. And we've got some big projects coming up soon with some investment companies looking at redevelopment of the hospitality sector through some bigger investors, which could, mean massive steps in terms of balancing the books in terms of ethical investment in hospitality. So there's a lot going on. There's some exciting projects out there that people. I think the frustrating bit is for me is I can talk to you for a full day on all the things I get presented with on a day-to-day basis. But when out of 10 of them, only 2 of them are really come to fruition because it really is about the people around the table and how driven they are to get things done. So that's exciting for me. I love the project management. I love developing people. The team that I've got that I work with are fantastic, very lucky, very on top of things. From PR through to Silvana, who manages all the ops side of things. And, without them, I just wouldn't be able to even achieve anywhere near what we've done in the last 3 months, without a doubt.
Well, talking about achievements, I mean, you really came on my radar when this whole lockdown thing started, but, I've been tracking what you're doing and you are doing phenomenal things. So you should give yourself and your family a big pat on the back. I know the wife gets involved a lot as well. So, so you've got a great team there. Michael, if people want to get hold of you after this show, because I'm sure they will do, there's going to be venue owners out there, there's going to be people in the industry that just want to tap into that knowledge bank. How can they do that?
They can email us directly. Our website is www.ntia.co.uk, or you can email me directly just at Michael, Michael, at ntia.co.uk. Happy to take that. If you drop me a mail, it's probably easier. Phone is not always the easiest way to get hold of me, as you can appreciate. But yeah, happy to take any emails across, and I get back to people normally within 24 hours. So, and if I don't, then Silvana is pretty much on board with everything. So she knows where I am and what I'm doing. But yeah, no, I welcome anyone who's got any questions. This time in particular, I mean, there's a lot of people ask me, is this just for members? And I'm like, listen, we've got to take our hats off at the moment. Forget about membership. Mm-hmm. Let's just look at the industry as a whole. If you need some support, pick up the phone, drop me a mail, and I will try and help as much as I can. If I can't, then I'll find someone who will be able to. But, this is about us sticking together. It's not about, whether you're part or not part. I don't really want to have that discussion, because I think at the moment everyone just needs the help that they did. And, after this, if people decide that we're a body that people want to engage in, I want them to make that decision on their own, not something that I've forced or pushed, because I want them to join before I give them information. Yeah. Just get in contact, talk to me. I'm pretty amicable. I'll help you as much as I can.
Well, you seem like a great guy, and I'm looking forward to meeting you face to face in person very soon. We'll have a beer in either a pub down on the south coast or somewhere in London. So enjoy Super Saturday, and well done on all the good work, Michael. And we'll catch up soon. Thanks for coming on the show.
Lovely, thanks, Liam. Really appreciate it. And yeah, definitely look forward to that point.
Cheers, mate. I'll see you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Cheers.